Hello, this is a video tutorial for Unit 4, Activity 2. And in this activity, we're going to look at memos. So in the last activity, we looked at letters, specifically business letters. And so in this activity, we're going to look at another type of business writing, which is very similar to letter writing, called memos. And a memo essentially is a short written report that you would send to someone that you already know usually, that is usually working in the same place that you are. In that sense, it's different than letters, because a letter you're usually writing to someone that you want to hire you, or someone at a college or university that you want to get information from and you want to get into their program. But once you have a job, or once you are inside a university or college program, when you send reports, or when you communicate with your professor or with your boss or with someone or a coworker, we can refer to that communication as memo writing instead of letter writing. Okay, so with that said, we're going to look at 4 criteria for memos, and this is a little sort of a preview of what the top of a memo would look like. But the 4 criteria that you're going to need to be familiar with is going to be very similar to the criteria that we used for letter writing. And so you're going to need to know the audience. And as I said, usually for a memo, you're writing to someone inside the organization that you're already a part of. So you're usually writing to a coworker or a manager or someone that you already know. For the purpose, you need to be aware of the purpose of your memo. Why are you writing it? And you'll find that it's very important to make your purpose very clear when you're writing a memo to someone. The format, what should the memo look like? And so you're going to have a heading with information like to, from, date, and subject, so your basic headings. You'll notice that a memo doesn't have all of the same details that a letter would have. So if you remember, a letter has the address, and it has much more details, sometimes phone numbers and things like that. Whereas in a heading, for a memo, you're usually writing to someone that already knows you. So it's just to, from, date, subject. Okay, you don't need all the extra contact information. In terms of the paragraphs or the sections within a memo, you're probably going to have an opening segment where you establish the purpose of the memo. Usually you're establishing or explaining a problem or a task that needs to get done. Right, and so that's usually what you're establishing. You usually have a part of the introduction which establishes a context, which again is the event, the circumstance, the background to whatever it is that you're trying to discuss. And again, usually when you're writing a memo, since you're writing it to someone within your organization, within your workplace, you're usually addressing some sort of problem or a situation that has come up or a task that needs to get done. Okay, so again, that's what you're trying to do in the opening segment or the introduction of a memo. In the body sections, which is usually the longest portion of a memo, you're going to try to include details to support your ideas or to support the points that you're trying to make. Okay, and then in the closing segment, after the reader has absorbed all the information that you've given them, you want to close with a courteous ending. So you always want to be courteous, just like we talked about with letters. You want to be polite, okay? So you want to end in a polite manner. Sometimes you need to include necessary attachments. So sometimes if you're sending a memo about a certain project that you're working on and you want to get the feedback of your manager or your coworker, then you would attach a rough draft or something, kind of like when you email me and you're attaching your rough draft so that I'll take a look at it, right? So sometimes when you're sending memos, you do include attachments. You also need to be aware of the voice of your memo. So that's, again, going to be very similar to letter writing. You want it to be direct, concise, and businesslike. So you want to be make sure that you're not writing informal slang when you're writing a memo. So again, just to summarize, our 4 key criteria for letter writing is audience, purpose, format, and voice. And so what you're going to have to do here is you're going to have to look at 4 samples of memos. So 4 memos that were written by real Ontario College students. And you're going to kind of have to judge and rank these memos. So we've got memo number 1 here, job progress report. So take a look at this memo. Does this memo have the proper format? Is it using the proper voice? Does it make the audience clear who it is who is this memo written to? Okay. So take the criteria that we looked at the top of this activity and apply it to this memo. Okay. And then do the same thing for memo number 2, reminder of parking guidelines. Memo number 3, a proposal to set up a web page. And memo number 4, a plant tour. So you're going to look at those 4 memos and you're going to decide which one is the best, which one's second, which one's third, and then which one you think is the weakest memo based on the criteria of what makes a good memo. Once you've finished and gone through those 4 memos, you'll see it'll tell you to move on to the assignment page. So if we click on the assignment page, what you're going to be asked to do is to take your rankings for those memos and explain them as your assignment. So it says you have learned about the audience, purpose, format, and voice for a memo and had a chance to read and rank 4 different memos. Now you will explain those rankings. So using the subject heading for each memo as the title, identify which memo you ranked first, second, third, and fourth. So if we look at the 4 memos here, the subject line, I've already provided that for you. The subject line for this one is plant tour. The subject line for this one here was a proposal to set up a web page. And here the subject line, reminder of parking guidelines. And here was a job progress report. So we're using the subject line as the title to identify each of the 4 different memos. Okay? And so what you're going to do is for each of those 4 memos that you ranked, 1 through 4, you're going to explain why you ranked it where you did. So discuss the memo's use of audience, purpose, format, and voice. The important thing in this assignment is to show me that you understand these 4 different criteria in memo writing. You're going to include specific details from the memos to support your points. So if you say that one of the memos has a very well done format and it is structured and it looks correct, then give me an example to show me that. If you're going to tell me that one of the memos doesn't use the right voice, then give me an example from that memo to prove that. Okay? So each of your 4 explanations should be a short paragraph with approximately 6 to 8 sentences. So in about 6 to 8 sentences for each of the 4 memos, you should be able to explain why you ranked it where you did and explain how it used audience, purpose, format, and voice. Okay? And then you're going to submit your rankings and explanations to your teacher, and then this is how you'll be graded down here. So I'm going to grade you based on your understanding of what makes an effective memo. So did you understand audience, purpose, format, and voice? I'm going to grade you on your use of specific details from the memos to support your rankings. So did you use specific evidence from the memos to back yourself up? Communication in terms of your clarity and language use. So your spelling and your grammar, was that clear in your explanations? And then in terms of application, the clear and logical ranking of the 4 memos. So did you clearly rank the memos and make a logically explain why you ranked one of the memos as the best and one of the memos as the worst? Right? Now, in order to kind of show you how this might look, I've got a Google Doc opened here, and I've got the 4 titles of the memos here. Right. So again, I just took the titles right from the content page here, right from the subject line. So I've got my 4. I've got my 4 titles here, right? And so now what you need to do in this assignment is you need to rank these 4 memos. So hypothetically, let's say I decide to rank this one number 2, this one number 4, and this one number 3. Whoops. And say I decide that the last one is the best one. And so I'm going to rank that number 1. So those are my hypothetical rankings for the memos. And then I have 6 to 8 sentences here to explain my rankings, right? So I can say, I ranked the job progress report memo as the second best memo. And then I can explain why, right? And so you want to comment on the memo's use of audience, format, voice, and purpose, right? So you want to show me that you understood the criteria in your explanation. Okay. So again, you should have a short little paragraph here, not so short, maybe 6 to 8 sentences here, explaining each of the 4 memos that you looked at. Okay. I hope that makes sense. You're not writing your own memo in this assignment. You're critiquing and you're ranking the 4 memos that I have provided to you. Okay? If you have any questions about that, please let me know.